Welcome to the Parenting Then and Now podcast, the show that remembers the good and sometimes the not so good old days of parenting past. I'm your host, Samantha Kemp-Jackson from the Multiple Mayhem Mama blog, and every week we'll be talking about how things were then and how they are now, parenting through the lens of the ages, if you will. Now, whether you're a parent, a kid, or someone who used to be a kid, you'll want to stay tuned as we reminisce about the past, embrace the future, and marvel in the present how things have changed. If you're ready to glance back in time at kids, parenting, and the good old days, you're in the right place. So sit back, relax, and let's take a trip down parenting's memory lane. I hope you enjoyed this episode. A mother, a daughter, a wife, and a dancer. Marci Warhaft has been all of these things and so much more. The Good Stripper, her autobiography that reveals in raw detail the pains, challenges, and eventual triumphs over life's unscheduled events, is really something you have to read. Because we all know that in spite of our best laid plans, life comes at you fast, and sometimes really hard. On this episode of the Parenting Then and Now podcast, I sit down with Marci to discuss her incredible journey to self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-love. She's been through the fire and emerged stronger than anyone could ever have imagined. Here's our discussion. Welcome to the Parenting Then and Now podcast, Marci. It's so great to have you on the show.
It is so great to be here. I'm very excited.
And I have to say, so you and I have been following each other for some time on social media. We follow each other on different platforms. And I'm always really inspired by what you're doing because you always seem so positive and so happy. You dance a lot. You speak your mind. Sometimes you say some risque stuff, but it's always a mixture of stuff. And that's what keeps me and probably a lot of other people coming back. And I'm so glad you're on the show today because I think that you have a lot to share with the world in terms of parenting then and now, both from the perspective of being a child and being an adult. You've gone through a lot of things. And I will say, before you get into some details about your life, that your book, The Good Stripper, which I've read from cover to cover, is so fantastic. And I would strongly recommend for all of my listeners to get your book. And I will put links in the show notes and on the website and all of that, but there's so much there. I don't even know where to start, but so with that long preamble, I'll put it over to you and I'll say, tell us all a little bit about your background in terms of your childhood, how you grew up, and how you got to where you are today.
Wow. Okay. It's funny because I think I had a pretty, let's say, quote unquote, traditional childhood from the very, very beginning. So on paper, I should have sailed through life. On paper, I should have been extremely well adjusted and, did the typical high school, university, get married, just sailed through everything. But what I learned was that life doesn't always happen that way. And so for me, it started off very typical. It was two parents, an older brother, older sister. I was the baby. And kind of treated as such, in a good way. I was very supported and very loved and had this incredible mother who would tell me I was beautiful, but more than that, she'd say that I was interesting and that I remember speaking of parenting, my favorite compliment she ever gave me is she was in the kitchen with a bunch of her friends and I was little and I walked in and they were discussing something. And I remember her afterwards saying, when you come in the room when my friends are here, because I'm always excited and interested to hear what you have to say, because I always know that you're going to add something interesting to the conversation. And I was little. And I remember thinking, that is unbelievable to hear that what I have to say, that my thoughts are worthy. And so that's how I started off. And I was a little singer and a little dancer and I performed and I played sports and, did pretty well in school, sort of middle-class family. And then when I was 10, my parents got divorced. And I was the first kid in my school whose parents got divorced, so they didn't know what to do with me on, Father's Day or anything like that. And it was tough. My father decided he didn't want to be a parent, and he left, and he, didn't pay a penny. And my mother was raising 3 kids, and she didn't have any support, and that was difficult. However, it wasn't as bad as it could have been because I was very close with my mother, and I was very, very close with my older brother. My sister and I never quite clicked until more recently, but my brother was 5 years older, and just like he was better than my father could have ever been, and my mother was so spectacular. So from 10 to 17, it was good. We were closer, and everything was good. My life completely changed when I was 17 years old. That for me was the turning point in my life. Like, I truly believed that my life was going in one direction and completely took a turn in another direction. When my brother, when I was 17, became ill and he passed away. So I was 17 years old, he was 21. He was ill, but I did not see it coming. And it changed my life in the sense that in 2 ways. One, at that age, you're supposed to feel invincible. And here, my older brother was athletic and just great. He got sick and he died. So to me, it was like that safety bubble that you feel was gone.
And you
So
were
instead,
very close to your older brother. You said that he was your protector, and
yeah, I describe in my book as being the invisible armor I wore out in the world. And so losing him, I mean, it was terrifying because I did feel like, okay, now anything bad can happen. Like, you really feel like your whole world is just, like I always say, I think the minute before I heard that he died was the last time I've ever felt truly safe, ever.
wow.
And then I also, the other part of it was that at that age, especially, you feel like you lose control. Like, there's nothing, all of a sudden I had no control over my life. The one thing I could control was my body. That's the only thing that I had autonomy over. And I felt that he was such a good person. Everybody loved him. He was so kind. I felt the world needed him more than it needed me. And so I spent the rest of good chunk of my life feeling that I wish it had been me that died instead of him. And I remember saying that to my mother, saying, if it was me, you'd still have a son and a daughter. But she said, but I wouldn't have my Marci, and she said it was, what would I do without my Marci? But so I always say also that Billy's death gave birth to my eating disorder.
Yeah.
And I focused I say too, it was easier to focus on my empty stomach than his empty room. It's just too much. You can handle physical pain more because you understand it. You cut yourself, you see it. I get that. I get that pain. When it's an emotional pain that deep, how do you wrap your head around it? How do you move through it? It just affects, so it affected everything. I had dreams of becoming an actress, and I was very outgoing, and it stopped me in my tracks completely. And my entire focus became, I have to earn my spot in this world. I can't just be regular. I have to be extraordinary, but I didn't feel extraordinary. And that carried through. It also made me, as this little girl who was really known for being confident and nothing intimidated me and nobody intimidated me, to being really, I became so self-conscious, and so my self-worth was so low that it's like you're trying to build a house with a very shaky foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so you become vulnerable to outside sources and influences. So I became vulnerable to situations that I wasn't prepared for. I became vulnerable to people who didn't have my best interests at heart.
Yeah.
I trusted people that I shouldn't have. I didn't trust myself. I didn't have the strength to walk away from situations. And that set the scene and the course for trauma after trauma after trauma. And so this little girl that's sort of on paper, it should have been easy.
Yes.
It wasn't.
Now, there's so much to unpack there, and so I don't want to hurt you by making you like recount some of the stuff that's in your book.
No,
Because there's a lot of traumatic stuff that's happened in your life. So just, you can just talk about what you feel comfortable talking about. But there were a series of events that occurred after your mom and your dad split up. So, the illness and the subsequent death of your brother. Your mother got sick. You weren't very close with your older sister. Your mother had a boyfriend, and then I guess he moved in with her and they got married, so he was your stepfather. So there was a number of things that I think, just one of the things that you outlined. I won't give everything away because I want
Right.
everybody to go out and buy your book. But perhaps you can just recount for us a couple of the things that you feel were salient points that informed some of your behavior following those events.
So yeah, I mean, we won't get into. I just want to clarify because I think sometimes when we mention my stepfather, people get kind of the different ideas. There was a crime factor
Yeah.
with him, and it was he was the first person I knew before me to live kind of a double life, and that was something where I learned. So my father was gone, and then my brother was gone, and then this man who seemed fantastic turned out to be completely different than he was. So that's a trust thing, and another kind of male trust thing. At that point, I felt every man leaves me, and either by choice or by illness or different things, but it kind of, without even, it's sort of a subconscious thing.
Yes, you don't,
People
you're not even
leave.
aware of it.
No, people leave and people die. That's what I was. That's no, they leave, they die, they lie. That's kind of the first, that those were the messages I was getting. But I was still somewhat optimistic about things. And then it was the big things in my life. I mean, I got married too soon, I believe, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't formed. I was like not me yet. I didn't know who I was, and I got married, and lost, got pregnant a few times, and that didn't go well. And then my mom, who was, my brother was the invisible armor I wore out in the world, and my mom was my safe place to come home to.
Hmm.
So I lost my mom while I was pregnant with my first, which meant I wouldn't have a minute as a mother with my mother.
Yeah.
And so I lost my protection out in the world, and then I lost my place to go home to. So I had somebody who read my book. She messaged me and she said, all I felt, she goes, I felt loneliness, and I hadn't
Yeah.
even thought of that, but she just said, I just felt, and that was, I lost that. So if I already felt somewhat unsafe. So then I felt really unprotected. And then after that, I got a very serious illness where I wasn't expected to live, and had to sort of fight my way back through from being someone who was always in the fitness industry to learning how to walk again and talk again and breathe on my own. And I mean, that was horrifying. And then, this marriage that I was in that started off well, it did. But, you meet somebody and you're two people and you think you click, and then it's not until you go through some things that you see, I think you learn stuff about yourself too. And he dealt with some of my trauma, but we dealt with it in very different ways. And I do believe, I say very clearly, I wasn't forced into anything, I wasn't coerced into anything, but I do feel that there was a situation that was manipulated. I do feel that the one person I had that I was supposed to be able to trust to have my back, never meant to hurt me, never maliciously went out to hurt me, but certainly saw an opportunity in my weakness, and took advantage of that. And as a result, because I felt that the two people in my life who had loved me unconditionally, the two people who really loved me, like I really felt loved by them, were gone. And then this person who was supposed to be that for me, and was, when I was in the hospital, was fantastic, but really I felt betrayed afterwards. I felt so unloved and unwanted that pushed me into a really dangerous direction, where I kept putting myself at risk, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. And at that point, I was a mom, and so that brings a whole other level of things
Yes.
into it.
And, I think that that's just such a good point, Marci, because I felt like when I was reading the book, there was this underlying and ongoing thread of vulnerability that you conveyed in every activity, everything that happened to you, everything that you chose to do or didn't choose to do, or maybe unwittingly or reluctantly. There was a lot of reluctance that I felt in some of the choices that you made in the book. And I think it's really important that that's why I'm glad you're here. And it's really important that we talk about that, just for not only women and men who are parents, but also women and men who might be raising children. And I hate to be, gender specific, but more girls than boys, because I feel like our society still isn't there where girls are given the opportunity to really feel who they are, to really
Hmm.
convey their voice, to really have strength in that voice and have that support behind them, whether it's a parent or a spouse or whomever. And I feel like with your story, again, not giving everything away, but I feel like you said it very succinctly. The two people that you loved the most, that you felt loved you the most, they weren't there. And then you were in a relationship with somebody who's supposed to love you that much as a spouse. And there were certainly situations when I was reading your book that I thought, I don't think that's cool. Like
Right.
I didn't think it was cool, but I don't want to judge, but I'm not
Right.
saying that your behavior, but the way that
Right.
your spouse at the time chose to either coerce you into, I felt it was
Right.
coercive,
Right.
because I feel that if somebody's already in a vulnerable position, they are not of complete sound mind. If anything, they need their partner to say, hun, I feel like you're not well.
Mm.
And, maybe we need to just chill for a little bit, or let's just not do anything right now. Let's just get you better. Right. But I
Right.
feel like that wasn't really happening very much. So I think it's really important for people to listen and to think about the relationships that they have, not only with, their significant other, their partner, their spouse, someone they love. And, relationships always have to be reciprocal, I always say, right?
Hmm.
So if
Hmm.
you're given everything and the other person's not giving anything, then what's the point? I try to teach my kids that. It's a hard lesson because,
Yeah.
I learned that too when I was growing up. There's always one friend where you feel like you're doing more of
Yeah.
it, and then the other person's just like, whatever. They're just sitting back, and it's this weird power dynamic. And I felt there was a power dynamic in your relationship, that was.
Mm.
It felt like he had more of the power, and you were trying to get some of the power, but you weren't
That's
sure how to. Can you
yes, and
explain a little bit more about
yeah. See, that's when you say that it's okay because and there's one because we keep saying like that I wasn't well, and it's important because I wasn't, but I didn't know, and so it's important to say that was coming out of the losses and then my illness and then I lost three babies and then I was pregnant again and then met my father again and he passed away. I mean, I had to laugh because it's so crazy, but there was too much.
Yeah,
And
of
I
course.
always say also that when my brother died, because I couldn't handle it and I went towards the eating disorder, that allowed me to push the grief down and not deal with it. When my mother died, I was pregnant and I was so afraid of my emotions hurting the pregnancy. I pushed those emotions down. When I was sick in the hospital, I was pregnant, and then lost that baby. But then I had a 16-month-old at home I needed to get well for. So I couldn't deal. I mean, I found
Hmm.
my hospital records where they say it took a while for me to get in my head that I had lost the baby. And I even said to them, which was so unlike me, I was surprised to read it. I can't handle any more losses right now. I can't do
Yeah,
about it. So I pushed that down. And then what happens is you're pushing it down, but where's it going? It doesn't go away if you don't deal
yeah,
with it. And
yeah,
so having my last baby, which was phenomenal, but it was almost like my body, and that was like just a year after I had just made it through this horrible illness. I think it was just I broke. Like it was my brain and the rest of me going, you can't like it stopped me.
yeah,
And I the only way I could deal with the rest of my life subconsciously, it wasn't a conscious thing, was I dissociated. And it was because I felt, and that's exactly what you're talking about. So there was a power imbalance, and I think my friends saw it more than I did even at the time. But I think what I say all the time is I wish I was a rebellious little girl, not in a bad way. I never got into trouble, but I stood up for things and issues. I wish that fighter in me at the time when I was going through this traumatic overload, I wish that fighter would have taken me out of the situation. But instead, it's exactly what you said. I felt like I didn't want to be controlled, and I felt like I was being controlled. So that rebellious part of me, instead of saying I deserve better, I'm going to leave this situation, or at least say this isn't okay. Instead, I was like, you can't control me. I'm going to do my own thing. But I felt like a bad person. I already felt that I already felt since my brother died, that I wasn't worthy. And here I really felt I wasn't worthy, and I'd already done things that were questionable. So instead of it taking me out, this control was like, you think I'm going to show you bad. I'm going to show you rebel. Or you want me to do these sexual things. Well, I'm going to show you what I can do on my own. So it just took me further into like the madness of it than taking me out of it. So it was me trying to take control, but not doing it in the right way.
Yeah, and I feel like, I feel like you were pushing down a lot of the trauma that you were going through, because it seemed like it was just successive trauma after trauma after trauma, without going into specifics. But there were a lot of things that, even one of those things
Right.
be so traumatic for a person to go through, and you had a number of them.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that you now, were you diagnosed with dissociative
No,
disorder?
I
No?
wasn't. So it
Okay.
was more. So it was more. So I shouldn't really say it like that, but it was more explained to me that it was like that. That it
Right.
was me because and I've said this before. I remember literally looking in the mirror and saying out loud, "Who are you?" Like I was that. I did not recognize myself in the mirror. I would do things, and it sounds so cliche, like a movie, but it's so true. Where I would feel like I was watching
Mhm.
myself. So as I've said this before, and I really feel it. I was so disconnected from my body while being hyper focused on my body. So
Mhm.
I was so disconnected
Mhm.
emotionally, but I was still dealing with my eating disorder. I was still starving myself and
Mhm.
overtraining, and I was using my body sexually to feel
Mhm.
some sort of attention, even if it was for 10 minutes from someone I knew didn't care about me. So and I remember too feeling those things really. Sex and food. It's an interesting thing because
Mhm.
it was, I knew if I stopped the sexual behavior, even though it wasn't safe or healthy, I was going to start eating.
Yeah.
And it was like this battle, like so they were fighting, and I was losing to both of them.
Well, and it's really interesting, you talking about that. Sex and food, um, and in your instance, and with many people, it's control and it's
Hmm.
pleasure, right?
Right.
So you got two elements there. You've got control, the sexual aspect of it, and
Hmm.
pleasure. So
Hmm.
if you have an eating disorder, and it sounded like you were vacillating between overeating sometimes and, like, so binging and purging, or overeating, undereating,
Right.
starving yourself.
Right.
So it's that, obviously you wanted to feel this sense of control over your physical body. And sexually, if you extrapolate on that further, you could say, well, you were trying to control a situation where you were the boss, because you didn't feel
Hmm.
control, obviously, about a lot of things that were happening to you, not of your own
Right.
wanting. I mean, all of the trauma you suffered, you didn't want it to suffer it, but it happened
Right.
anyway.
Right.
Whereas sexually, you probably thought, okay, you might have been coerced into some things, but you figured, okay, I'm in this, so at least I'm gonna, take the controlling, perspective, and
Right.
make the best of it,
But
right?
but the thing is also, it never, you want that sense of control, but you can't hide who you are. Like you can't from yourself. So even with food, there are times, anyone who deals with an eating disorder knows, when it comes to binging. And I know, I thank God I have very strong recovery right now. But I knew there were times when I would say to myself, like a normal person can have cookies, and I do every day, a normal, but I wasn't that person. So I would eat to the point where then I would binge. And so we talk about the pleasure. So yeah, the first of anything is amazing, but by the
Yeah.
50th, it's pain. Then you're
Yeah.
punishing yourself with it. So to have, and I don't want to get specific because I don't want to, anyone who's struggling with stuff, because I don't want to put numbers, but like if you have a few of something
Hmm.
that's decadent, you enjoy it, and that's great, and you should. But if then you feel shame about it. So then it's like, I'm going to punish myself, and instead of having 4 cookies, I'm going to have 3 bags of cookies. So it's physically painful, and I'm
Hmm.
shaming myself. And that's what I did with sex too. And I talk about in my book about one person in particular who I felt so bad about being with them. I knew they didn't care about me. I say all the time, we played a game where he would pretend that we had something special, and I'd pretend that I didn't know that he was completely full of crap. And I felt so bad about being with him. It was my way of proving to myself I'm such a horrible person, but I'm going to be with this person. And then he would leave, and I would binge on food. to further punish myself. So it was never where I was like feeling a high from being with these people. It wasn't. It was more like I felt like all I had to give the world was my body. And so if that's what they wanted, then I was going to do that. But then I did feel bad about it. So there was, I had people in interviews say to me, like, thinking that confusing that that part of my life was me expressing a part of myself that I always wanted to. It wasn't that, somebody said, what was the best part of being Cassidy, which was like my dancer name. There wasn't a best part of it. It wasn't a good time, it wasn't, and I say all the time, if the dancing wasn't bad, that's not what I feel shame about, and nobody should in that industry. But it was just my feelings, the trauma, everything that was going on at that time. That was not, I wasn't this girl who was coming into her own and her sexuality and that would have been fine. That's not what this is. It was also not the case when I was dancing. I've had a lot of people too assume it's very stereotypical. All dancers are single parents, daddy issues, that whole thing, broken. Yeah. No, it's not. We're all different. And I wasn't doing it to put food on the table. I wasn't doing it, it wasn't that. For me, I was lost, and it was me trying to regain some sense of something, because I did feel used, and I did feel unloved, and I did feel like if the person who's supposed to love me doesn't love me, but is telling me that other men desire me and is getting off on that, and I'm finding other men are desiring me, well, that's better than nothing. If you can't be loved, then to feel wanted is better than nothing.
And that's really interesting, because I feel like it's by not getting to the root of the problem, I'm not talking just about you, but all of us, if we deny what the core issue or element is, in terms of a relationship we have, whether it's with our spouse or our children, our parents, our cousin, whoever, if we deny it, then all the stuff that goes on top of it, it's not going to get rid of it. It's just going to be there, and it's going to manifest itself in different ways. Some people do it with food. Some people do it with sex. Some people do it with drugs, right? You talked a little bit about a drug situation that you had for some time that you dealt with and worked through.
But that wasn't. That was the thing. It wasn't. I was on pills for pain from my surgeries. I never actually. That was what was so interesting. Actually, during the I used to call my crazy time, when I was acting out I never had a sip of alcohol, and I never had a recreational drug. Nothing. Like, I was on stage dancing. I'd never done that before. I'm in my 30s. I'm a mom to toddlers, and I was the only one that was not, because I would go to I was working out because I was so obsessed with that. I would go to my locker and have my protein shake. Like, what is that? Like, so I didn't have and so luckily I didn't. It's funny because it is weird that the way that I dealt with my trauma was through a sexual type of thing and food. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't alcohol, gambling, money. Because when I was put on very high doses of narcotics for my surgeries, I hated it. I hated being on it. But,
and you weaned yourself off.
I weaned myself. Yes. Yeah. I actually had a doctor who was like, why bother? I'm going off it. And I hated it. And I weaned myself off methadone. Yeah, that was not fun. But yeah, oh my God, I can't even imagine if I had that on top of it. I can't. Food was enough to deal with and everything. But I did have to, weaning yourself off. Luckily you do get addicted physically. You can't not. I was on high doses of OxyContin for 3 years, methadone for 3 years. Getting off it is not fun, but I didn't have a psychological attachment to it, which I think is, because I wasn't an addict, I knew I'm getting it off it, and I just did. Like, you deal with the physical, which is terrible, but I didn't have that. The way food kept me for 30 years, I was off the methadone in 6 weeks, but the food had me for most of my life.
So, so you have 2 sons, and so the show is Parenting Then and Now, and you've learned a lot of things through your various journeys, and we've touched on some of them, but I want people to buy your book and read specific details, because it's very, like, I read it in a couple days. It was really, really good. But from the parenting perspective, you've learned, obviously you've grown and you've learned a lot of lessons throughout all of the traumas that you've had to endure, and you've come through it. And I just want to say, for the record, I think that you are a survivor and a superwoman because I don't think a lot of people could go through everything that you've gone through and come out as you come across as so positive and real and raw. And, you know, I follow you on social. And what I like about following you on social, Marci, is that you are not, you know, all unicorns and rainbows and butterflies all the time. Sometimes you are. Sometimes you're dancing in your stories, and that's lovely. And it always gives me a nice chuckle when I scroll through and I see you and I think, oh, there she is. She's dancing again. Great. But you also are very honest and
Yeah.
real. And that really comes through in your book. And so what I wanted to say, I went off on a tangent there, but what I wanted to say about your sons is, first of all, the messages and the lessons that you've learned through all of the things you've gone through, and you've come out the other side better than ever. What have you learned and how have you conveyed that to your kids? The second question would be, there were some things in the book. Did your kids read the book, and how did you prepare them for things that I'm sure that they didn't know before? And how old
Yeah.
are your kids? Because that'll give some
Okay.
context.
So we'll start with that part because
Okay.
listen. I wish I had had a little bit better. My kids are 18 and 22, so
Hmm.
they're older. I would not have written it when they were younger.
Yeah.
I couldn't have anyway. I wasn't. I couldn't. I needed to grow more anyway. So I am in love with the truth, and I can't. I physically react if I can't be just open. And they knew I was writing a book. I've written about body image and self-esteem for years. I think that's kind of what they thought. I wasn't ready to tell them yet. I think part of me, I'm writing this book and who knows, my fear was like, what if it doesn't come out? And I tell them all this stuff and it doesn't come out and they know all this stuff. I didn't want to be too premature. And so but I would say to them, so I'm writing this book and there's some stuff we're going to have to talk about. Because it was hard for me not to say anything, but it wasn't, so they knew. At one point, one of my sons was like, did you kill someone? Like, okay, well, let's set the bar pretty high, so at least. But then it was really soon to it coming out, and I met with them, and I said, actually, they knew nothing about anything. They knew nothing.
So that must have been a lot for them to learn, eh?
Listen, I don't know. They're boys, which is a little bit different, not to gender, whatever, but they come out less of an emotional part of it. But they were amazing because so actually it was like, do I tell them the title? Do I show them the book cover? And it's, it's The Good Stripper, Soccer Mom's Memoir of Lies, Loss, and Lap Dances. And they knew nothing about lap dances or anything. And I showed them the cover and on my phone and they looked at it. And my younger son was like, how long ago was this? I'm like 15, 16. He's like, why would I care? Like, which was really amazing. And then my older son also, what I kept saying to them was, I talk in my book about how I would go days without sleeping because I was dancing, but then I would come home and I would be with them all day. Like I wasn't putting a DVD in the machine and saying, take care of yourselves. Like I was there. So I kept saying I made these mistakes. And so my older son said, you keep saying you made mistakes, but you also keep saying that you wanted us to have a great childhood. We had a great childhood. So maybe you did what you needed to do. They didn't go, oh, okay, that's why they had no idea because I could say, like, I really, losing my mom and almost dying myself, I always went through the rest of my life going, I don't know how much time I have left. So it was very important to me that they felt loved every second.
And they obviously
that they had me. And that's what they said. They said, so there wasn't any trauma for them. Now, I wish I would have told them a little bit more because when I announced publicly the book was coming out, there was a little pushback from some people in their lives who were thrilled I was writing it. And then my older son was like, what is coming? Like, and my younger son still, I don't think he has any interest in it. They're not going to read it. Maybe later they will. And I write very real, very raw, graphic. They don't need to read that. But I let my younger son know if at some point I won't hide anything. If he wants details, he can ask me, he can ask his brother, maybe that's easier. But I'm not going to throw stuff at him. My older son said, I want to know. He wanted to know. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting in my car, we were on the phone, and I just told him everything that was in the book. And I was very careful too, because I didn't want to make anyone look bad. That wasn't my point. And you know what he said? Because, it's interesting to hear about your parents as not your parents, as people. And he said, He said there's nothing traumatizing for him. He said he felt bad that I was hurt. He said that he loves both his parents. He always will. And he said that he has my back, and he says he loves me. And he messaged me that night to make sure I was okay, and to remind me that they were all in my corner. And again, my younger son's been amazing too. So again, they're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna read it. If they do, hopefully it'll be later on in life. But they know me, and that's the other part of it. Is you ask like the lessons, and I think they've known for a while that I'm not like everybody else. They knew when I was standing up for body image stuff and against the diet industry. They saw me speaking out and being different and going against that. I fought their school and their elementary school about a program that came in with nutrition. Like, I was a bit of a troublemaker on a mission. But I think, they'll say, they call me a free spirit, and I agree. And I think part of me would like them to read it, only because I feel like they would understand me more.
They probably will at some point when they're ready.
Later. But what I want, the lesson that I want them to learn is that I think, you're born and we're put on this kind of this conveyor belt kind of thing of like I was saying before, you follow a certain way of going in life, and we're all sort of expected to follow. And I think that sets people up. And I think someone like me who tried to live the normal, just like I tried to stay in a marriage that wasn't right. I tried to sort of be the perfect mom that I thought I had to be. And I felt like a puzzle piece that never fit. And because of that, because I was trying to be somebody I wasn't, I felt like there was always something wrong with me. And it's what I've learned now. It's no, that was just not me. And the minute that you realize who you are and you speak about what you want and what you need and how you want to live, there's freedom in that. And I want them to know that there's no right or wrong way to do life. If you're not hurting anybody, there's no right way. When they were little, I was very careful. I would never say, when you get married or when you have kids. It was, if you get married, if you have kids. I don't want that. They can do whatever. They owe me nothing. I didn't have children to have little versions of myself. I want them to be exactly who they're supposed to be. And I feel like I'm showing them that. I'm showing them that you can be whoever you are. And some people love you for it, and some people will judge you for it, but they'll do that anyway. Exactly. So at least if people are going to, that's sort of part of why I wrote the book too, is if people are going to judge me anyway, at least judge me for the real stuff, at least know what you're judging me for. And I hope they see also that I've tripped and I've stumbled, and it's like you were saying, I'm not all unicorns and rainbows anywhere. When I'm mad, I'm mad. When I'm sad, I'm sad. And it was important for me that people who do see me being super positive, that that's how I feel now, because I've cried a lot, and because I still let myself feel my feelings. I just don't marinate in it. But I think it's important. It's okay. You could be inspirational and still have done things you're not proud of. You can be a great person and have made mistakes and stumbled and fallen and had to pick yourself up, pulling yourself up by your fingernails. And you're still a good person. I think we judge ourselves on our mistakes instead of on what we've survived. Yeah. And now that's what I did. I judged myself on my mistakes. Whereas now I appreciate and I'm proud of myself for my recovery. I'm proud of myself for being a survivor. I'm not my traumas. I'm how I survived my traumas. And there's this quote, I think I just posted it recently again. And it was something about how people say trauma made you strong and you're No, it didn't. You made you strong. When you go through, don't give the credit to trauma. Yeah. You didn't do that. Trauma was chipping away at you and hurting you. But anyone who's gone through it and come out, that's you. You did that. We need to really, it's so easy for us to tell other people how great they are, but we're so hard on ourselves, all of us, no matter our gender or age, whatever, we're so hard on ourselves, and we need to really stop doing that. And it's weird, this book, because I've said to you earlier that when I didn't know how people were going to take my story. I didn't know how people were going to take me. I did
now,
not.
Let me just jump in. Sorry to interrupt you, but I have to ask you this. So before you wrote your book, did all of your family and friends, the people who know you, did they know all of this stuff about you before?
No.
They didn't. So it was a big shock.
Well, first of all, okay, so my family, it's sadly, it's my sister and my two kids. That's my family that's left.
Right.
And again, like I was saying, my sister and I were not close until this year on my birthday. And it was interesting because I sent her a few chapters and the chapter she was in, because I wanted to sort of see how she'd feel. And what was amazing was the first time, I mean, I'm 50, she's 57. And it was the first time that we spoke about things, seeing how different my relationship with my father was to her relationship with my father, my relationship with my brother and her relationship. You know, we were both very close to him, but as the baby, they protected me from everything. And as the oldest, they put everything on her. That's different. You know, my
Yeah.
father wanted nothing to do with me. My father wanted to party with her. That's different. You know, it was completely different. And being 7 years apart, and I'm more of a talker and she's more keeping it in more. And we just couldn't, and this was like a breakthrough. And I say also that she's the only other person who knows what it's like to be Shirley Maine's daughter. She's the only person who knows what it's like to be Billy's sister. You know,
Yeah.
we are the only two people in the world who've had that pleasure, and we're blessed for that. So now we really appreciate each other and we really get each other, and that's been a major gift for me, like huge. But she knew some of it. She
Hmm.
didn't know. Nobody really knew all of it. I mean, I had a couple of close friends who knew stuff, but even my closest friends who, I have one friend who I talk about, I thanked her in the book, but we talk about how she would sit with me during my craziness, let's say, and she would say, I love you, I don't judge you, but I'm terrified for you. Like she was just so worried about me, especially not sleeping and not eating and being with people. And I mean, it was hard. It's hard to see somebody you love kind of doing that. And I wasn't ready to do anything about it. But even she would go, okay, I didn't know that. You know, there are certain things, because the more you write, the more the memories kind of,
Right.
you know,
And do
and
you think that
again,
you kind of did you push some of the memories back, and did they come out when you were writing the book?
you know what, there are a couple of things that, I think there was like one chapter that I kind of added, and I was like, I can't believe I'm sharing that. It was about one of the dancing stories, and I was like I think, and then I laughed, like, but yeah, I think the more you tell it, no, because I used to tell it all the time. That's what happened. That's an interesting thing, though. The way you handle trauma, I was told. Because when I came out of the hospital, I remember saying to a therapist, "I'm talking about the hospital a lot." She's like, "Yeah, that's how you get through trauma. You tell it and you tell it and you tell
Yeah.
it, so it becomes more of a story." And so I was able to tell my life like it was nothing, which is why I was writing my story going, who's going to care? It's just, I'm not anyone special and it's not such a big deal. And then they say you judge your trauma when you're telling it like it's nothing. And the people you're telling it to are just horrified, and people go, no, it's kind of a big deal. So
You
I
had a
think
lot of big deals in that book, my
I
friend.
did. Well, I
You
know,
had a
but
lot of
it
big deals. I'm
was,
like, this is like trauma after trauma. I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but
no,
you've gone through a lot of trauma.
it did feel, I always say, I felt like I couldn't catch my breath. Like, there was that one when I was 17 to 18, maybe 19, in that short period of time. I mean, it was my brother dying, my stepfather being arrested, my mother getting cancer, my developing my eating disorder, and I was graduating high school and starting a new. It was just like, I can't, but society is saying, keep going,
Plus, you're
and
young, right? You're not even an adult yet, really, because they say our brain doesn't form
yeah,
until
to
you're, in your
20s.
mid 20s, and you're going through all this trauma, and your brain is still forming at the same time. So you have to kind of think about I guess, from a medical perspective, what all of those chemicals, because we release hormonal
Mm,
chemicals when we're,
right.
happy or sad or whatever. What that deluge of chemicals in your body did to your later development and maybe some of the decision making.
For sure.
Right? You kind of have to think about
But
it
then
from that
also
perspective.
yeah, and then you add an eating disorder, so you're
Mhm.
literally starving your body from who knows what was, so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's why I've been able to look. I say there, you're not supposed to regret anything in life. That's the cliche, right? You're not to, regret is it's a useless emotion. Or I disagree. I think, for me, I don't feel, there's a difference between regretting something and feeling shame over it. There were things that I've done that I felt so much shame because I couldn't separate the action with the person. So instead of me feeling like I'm a good person who did something bad, I was a bad person. And so I felt shame, and that kept me miserable, and it kept me from enjoying my life. It kept me from feeling like I deserve to be happy and I deserve to be healthy. So I don't feel the shame anymore because I understand it. I forgive myself for doing things that I did when I was just trying to survive. But I do regret a couple of things, because I regret the things that I inadvertently or I hurt other people. And that is something that I will never be okay with. And I'm okay with not being okay with that. I'm okay with never feeling good about the fact that my actions ended up hurting somebody else. I don't want to ever feel okay with it. I'm not gonna beat myself up
But
about
you
it
accept
anymore.
it. You accept it.
That's it.
That's
I
right,
can't.
because we all
But
do
that's
that,
it.
right?
That's why. So I'm not going to. I forgive myself for it. But I wish I hadn't done it. That's the thing. But I can't go back, and all I can do is learn from it.
Hmm.
And that's what I've done. And I think that one thing that's really important. I've just every day, I swear, when I hear from more and more people, I kind of get these new epiphanies. And one thing I've realized is that I think that we project our feelings about ourselves onto other people, for like we expect them to look at us the way we do sometimes. And
Hmm.
so, like I said, when I wrote the book, I thought people would, especially the parts that I was like I cringe at, I thought they would be cringing at that too. And I found that that wasn't the case. All the either people don't even, when I'm talking to people about it, they don't even mention those parts. They focus on what I came out of and how I came out of it, instead of focusing on the negative. And to hear somebody say that I make them feel less alone, I hear that a lot. I mean, that's incredible to have people say that they still can't face some of their stuff, but they appreciate seeing me do it, and that that's the thing. I was so afraid of my secrets coming out, and I let that control me. And now I let my secrets out, and I'm better than ever because of it. I never would have known that. So I wish that we all could be so authentic about the bad stuff too. I
Yes.
really wish we could, because I feel like that's the connector. Like I just connected with a woman the other day who we met when our kids were little, and we had a falling out. And for years I thought she hated me, and she read it, and we just had a talk. And it was like, we're actually quite similar, but we never had, we a million years ago had this both been open about who we were and what we had been through, we would have connected.
Yeah.
But we hide that stuff for fear. We're so afraid that we're going to push people away. But the reality is, by being real and honest, even with the yucky stuff, we actually bring people in, and you
Because we're
get
all dealing with
support.
something. We're all
We
struggling. I
are
mean, I think, this is what, in our society, and I think you've made a really important point there, is that, there's no shame in going through stuff that you might have regretted. Like, you did something. We all do things. You do things
yeah.
and you look back and go, what was I thinking? Why did I do that?
Hmm.
Everybody has those moments. The people who say
Right.
that they haven't, they're lying.
Right.
Right. And, some might be more intense than others, depending on what our life situation is and, where we live, our family. But, we all do things where we go, I wish I didn't do that. But, my mother always taught me, what did you learn from that situation?
Yeah.
That's what you should need to take away. It doesn't matter what you did. It's
Right.
okay, what is the lesson that I needed to get from that activity or that thing that happened? What did I learn from that? Because I always say the best lessons, that the things that taught me the most in life are the things that were painful.
Hmm.
Not the things
For
that were really
sure.
happy. I mean, I love
No.
happy, joyful things, but it's the things that hurt are
Yeah.
that gave me the lessons that I will never forget. And you won't make the same
Hmm.
mistakes, right?
No, for sure. No, it is. There, you learn, and you also, like, now I know. If I were, I can, if I were to go back, I still would have made the same. You can't go back, but I think if I were to be in a situation now where I felt controlled, let's say, or now I would I would save myself. One thing that's been very interesting to me is that I find that a lot of people in my life, even people that I haven't spoken to since I was 5 years old, a lot of the reaction I'm getting from people who knew me is to say, I feel bad. I wish I would have known. I would have helped you. I wish I would have known. I would have, and it's funny when people say that. But the thing is, I wish I would have, now that I know, I would save myself. Now that I know, I would be able to say, like I said earlier, either I would walk away from a situation or I'd say, stop, I'm not accepting this. But I would save myself. And I couldn't do that then. A, I didn't know how. B, I didn't think I was worthy of being saved. Now it's different. I only know that now because of what I went through. Now, I'm not somebody who says, somebody said to me recently, be thankful for the bad things that happen. No, that's, again, I'm not, that's for your
No,
fridge
you
magnet.
can learn
That's
from them,
not
but
me.
you don't have to be thankful for them.
No, I'm not going to be
Right?
thankful. No, exactly. Being thankful to the bad things to me is like it's like thanking your abuser for slapping you because it made your skin tough. No. But again, I what I can do with it, because it happened. So I'm not going to be thankful, but I'm also not going to live in that. What I can do is go, okay, this is what I was given. This is what I learned. What can I do with that now? And so that's how I'm living now. Like I think part of me, when people go, you're so brave, I think I'm just tired. I think I'm tired of, got tired of not being authentic. I got tired, and I thought I was. It wasn't like I was, but I got tired of living in fear. We talk about my children. I spent so much time afraid that they would find out that I danced. I spent so much time being afraid that they'd find out that I was with people that weren't their dad, even though their dad knew. So there was no infidelity. Let's get that. I was so afraid of that. And now I told them. Now it's in a book.
And it's not that bad, right?
Happened?
Like their
Nothing.
response was not what you thought it would be.
No,
it's always
that's exactly. That was it. They were like, yeah, so
you were harder on yourself than they are.
Right. And that's the whole, and that's what I think we all are. I think that's the whole thing. That's why I honestly, I wish people, because I have people sending me messages going, I can't, I want to, but I can't tell people because they're going to, I'm like, well, what's the worst thing that will happen? What is the worst thing? Is it that your family or your friend will turn their back on you? Well, then they're not your friend. And it sounds so cliche, but the thing is, but it is, because what I realized was anybody who's going to judge me on that, whether I tell you about stuff I did or not, I still did it. It's still me. So if you're only my friend because you don't know that stuff, then you're not my friend. So I'm not losing any. It's just, then it's time to, and it's not a nasty thing. It's like, you know what? Then we had our time. And it's just time to go. So I honestly wish, because I do think it's great when you're all rah and you have something great in common and that binds you. But really, at the gut of it, I think if we could just be honest about the stuff that we're going through, I think to say I'm having a great day and someone goes, I'm having a great day too. Yeah, that's great. But if you can say, I'm dealing with this, when someone else goes, I'm dealing with that, or I've dealt with that, or I get that, that brings us together. And I think that's what we need. We don't need more people saying, brush it off and, be strong. And my mother used to say all the time, it's important to have little breakdowns to avoid the big breakdown, and she was the type of mother who let me stay home from school if I was having an emotional day. She felt like it was important, and that was a long time ago before that was even like a thing. But I think it's important that we feel our feelings. That sounds cliche, but it's true.
No,
like you feel it. Like if you're feeling down, feel it. If you're feeling angry, feel it. Like it's okay. You're still inspirational. We're still going through life. Feel it, and then you let it go, and then you can move on. It's when you try to hide that, it'll
come out in other ways.
It'll come out, and even if physically, like I think I was. When I was writing the book, I was in so much physical pain writing the book, actually. So much physical pain. I was seeing a massage therapist. And it was because I was, it didn't take that. I wrote the book in about 8 months. And in that time, I'm writing, I stopped the book when I was about 46 years worth of drama in a few months. You feel it. I didn't even realize it until I stopped writing it and I felt fine. So your body does react. And so that's why you need to honor it. That's why I say now with everything going on in the world, like if you need to sleep more, sleep more. If you need to eat more, eat more. If exercising is your thing, do it. If it's not your thing, don't do it. There's so much pressure on us to live the right way, and
there is no right way.
There is no right way. We're so different. Like we're all so different. And I think that there's so much power in honesty right now. I wish for me, it's been so liberating. And yes, it's weird. Listen, it's weird every time somebody on social media who I kind of know or don't know, especially a man, will
Yeah.
message me and go, "I bought your book. I'm reading your book," and I'm like, "Ooh, they're gonna learn a lot about me right now." Like it's it's a weird thing, but you know what? There's also something very cool about, like, now if I go to post something, if it's outspoken, or if I want to post a lip sync video. Now I'm thinking, if I take a second to go, should I post that? I'm like, I wrote a book about, like, what am I going to be afraid of now? Like, I can do anything pretty
That's
much,
right. That's right. And
And people will be like,
it's that fearlessness that you have, that you're embracing now, because it's like what you said a few minutes ago. What's the worst that could happen? Right?
that's it, exactly. The people who don't like it, like we talked before, I said you say, like, I post dance videos, and I was saying to you, like, there are people who message me and say, you make me want to dance, and that's great. But I know there are people who are going, ugh, again, like, oh my gosh, this woman's driving me crazy. I know that, but I'm not for them, and that's
right.
fine. But, at the worst, they'll go, the worst thing is people go, that's Marci. Like, that's the thing. Like, there she goes.
Yeah.
That's her.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they like. It's like, that's who I am. Like, this is it. Like, it really is, what you see is what you get. Like, this is it.
And that's the
It
way to
took me
be.
until
That's
I
the
was
way to be,
50.
for sure.
Yeah, and I wish I'm glad I found 50 very empowering. But this is, I almost died when I was 29. I wasn't supposed to see 30, and it's been 20. And it was a hard 20. And now I'm sort of in my own, and I really do wish people could learn. If my message is just like, honestly, I want people to be easier on themselves. I want people to forgive themselves. I want people to take this. We have one shot. Like, we really do. We have one life. Live it as you, and the right people will come to you, and you will be supported, and you will be loved. And it might be you might lose people, but you have no idea who you're going to get. And that's the exciting part. You might get some amazing people in your life, and amazing support, and amazing opportunity, just by being your authentic self. And it's so worth the shot.
Yes. Oh, you know what? I can't say anything else. So I think I can't top that, Marci. I can't top that. On that note, I want to say, okay, first of all, where can people find your book, and where can they find you? Tell everybody where they can find you.
So I actually have one here to show the other.
All right. Yeah, look at that.
So so you can find it at Amazon. Order it on Amazon, or in Canada, Chapters Indigo, in stores and online. And it's just my name. It's Marci Warhaft. Facebook, Instagram. Maybe
Lots
I'm
of
on
dance
Twitter
videos.
too. Yeah, it's just me being sassy and feisty, and
And you know what I would really like, I'd like you to perhaps come on a little bit later on and talk about your body positivity, because you do workshops, right?
Yes.
Can you
yes.
give just like a little bit of an overview of your workshops, and if there's somewhere
Yes.
that people can find it,
Yes,
where
absolutely.
to find it? Okay.
Yeah, so the workshop is called Fit versus Fiction. And I created it years ago. I came out of the fitness industry, and I was a personal trainer, and I hated the messages that we were supposed to give. It was all about aesthetics, and not really about how our bodies worked. It was more how they looked. And my kids were little at the time, and I felt that their messages at school were all the health related stuff was about losing weight and what we shouldn't eat, opposed to like gaining health and making it positive. And I saw a lot of kids who were struggling. I just come out of recovery from eating disorder, and I saw a lot of kids were struggling young, and I thought, this is not okay. And so the fit versus fiction was what's really fit. The fitness industry messes with us, and the diet industry messes with us. So what I did was I created this program, and I started with fourth graders, but it went to first graders, and all the way up to, I would speak to parents and teachers. But what I do is it's an interactive program, so I don't talk at kids or parents. I speak with them. I just did one with the Girl Scouts a few weeks ago. I have tons of pictures and stories, and it's all about it's getting them to think about and to learn about media manipulation and marketing manipulation, and where the messages are coming from, and why we're getting these messages about how we're supposed to look, and who has to gain by making us feel, how companies profit off of our low self-esteem, and how that works. And I try to empower them with the tools they need to be able to fight. I want kids to live, I want us all to live with confidence in a society that's completely obsessed with image. And so I do it in a fun way, where it is through pictures and through stories and through my story, but it gets them engaged, so they want to talk. about it too.
Hmm.
And it's teaching them, but engaging them, and I learned from them too. But I think it's really important, and again,
I
I do
think
with
so
parents
too.
also, and
Hmm.
with teachers. But it's been really, as I said, I started with fourth graders, and then I was asked to speak to first graders.
That's awesome.
So it's been, yeah, so I've done that. So that is, it's fitversusfiction.com. So FITVSFICTION.com. And that's my website.
Okay, and I will link to that on my show page. I also want to ask you one more thing. So, with the fit versus fiction, now that we're in COVID lockdown and everybody's Zooming, how are you doing that? Are you
Zoom.
doing it virtual? Oh, so you're doing
Yeah,
Zoom meetings.
yeah. I
Okay,
just did
great.
one. Yeah, I did one in California. I
Oh,
just went with a
that's
group in California.
fantastic.
Yeah, so I did my little Zoom PowerPoint, and so I was
Yeah,
able to talk with the girls and have my pictures, and yeah, and they'd sent some stuff on that the troop leader, because it was Girl Scouts, passed on. I have like a pledge that I have them sign.
I love that.
But it was yeah, so it was my first time actually doing it virtually, but it was good. It was good.
That's
Yeah, and they had written,
awesome.
said they had answered a survey before, so I had some insight.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it was good.
I think
Yeah.
that's so important in body image, especially for young girls. I think it's so important. These negative images that we get in the news, and everybody has to look a certain way, and it's not right. So I'm
But
really glad you're doing this.
it's very twisted. That the sorry, but the most dangerous thing for me is they know, they understand Photoshop, they understand the beauty industry. What's very deceiving now for adults too, what's very deceiving is the fitness industry, because there's a lot of fitness information, diet information that's wrapped up in health, that's
Mm.
actually it's still eating disorder, it's still negative body image. And I think that's what's very confusing with people, is when you have a negative message that's wrapped up in something that sounds like it's a good message. So I try to break that down so
Mhm.
that they do have the information and the tools that they need to get. I always say, like, you can't protect your kids from the negative messages. So what you have to do is you need to give them the tools that they need to be able to block them out. Then they're going to get negative messages from outside. Our message as educators and as parents and as just people who love kids is our messages have to be louder. And that's how it's always been with me and my kids. It's just, it's that message has to, because
Mhm.
they're coming, and they come young. It comes young. So we gotta start.
For
Yeah.
sure. And you know what? You're going to come back and we're going to do a whole hour on just body image and
Okay,
kids and how to
perfect.
teach them. But I have to say, again, I know I said this a few minutes ago, but thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure to talk
Thank
with
you
you.
so much. I couldn't
And
wait
you
to
know,
talk to you.
and you know what? Your kids are lucky and fortunate to have you as their mom. They
Mm,
obviously came out. You did a great job, even though you
they're
didn't
good
think you
kids.
were at the time.
Yeah,
You
they're
did a
good.
great
They're
job, and
really,
they came out great, and they
yeah.
love you. And whatever you did it well. So thanks for being on the show today,
Thank you so
Marci.
much.
Whoa. Well, when life comes at you fast, what do you do? I think we've all learned from Marci's story that you can do anything you set your mind out to do, and you can be all you want to be. Life will always throw you a curveball, and you'll always be challenged. It's how you choose to deal with that challenge that's going to make a difference in the quality of your life and your eventual sense of contentment and happiness. Thank you so much, Marci, for sharing your journey with us and for inspiring others to live their best lives.